Hello, we're back in a third video of chapter 3 lecture about leisure health and well-being. And we're starting to talk about social well-being and leisure. This is very important because many leisure activities, as you know, are very social in nature. So again, taking the lifespan perspective, we're going to go from the infants and children, and the textbook talks about how play can help children and infants be effective in a peer interaction with other people, friends, it's not the parents, but peers, such as taking turns, taking leadership. And also, chapter talk about how children's peer interactions through play develop, and it gets more complex basically as you get old. For example, when children are 2 to 3 years old, typically children in this age group tend to engage in what is called parallel play, which is like this picture. It's so cute, right? The kids are basically, kind of next to each other, but they're doing the same activity, so they could play together. They could just interact more, but they don't really. It's a parallel. It's like a mirror image in a way. And they sometimes peek at each other, right? They kind of learn from each other, but they don't really intervene each other. Now, when you get to about 6 to 7 years old, again, typically, many kids reach to what is called a cooperative play time, that they, as a team and group, they share a collective shared goal, and they achieve that through, they take a different part roles and then achieve it. Apparently these 4 kids made a fort, right? A castle kind of thing with these blocks. This girl on the left side that you can see in a corner, maybe she wasn't part of it. She's not having fun. She wasn't part of that cooperation, but that happens too. Now, through leisure though, society also communicates a lot of social norms and social roles to children and other people. And well, to an extent, it's functional, I guess, and it's important. But also that there's a trick too. This is also problematic as well. And we're going to talk about that later in a minute. But one of those social norms that are communicated through leisure very, very strongly is gender identity. It's a personal sense of gender, right? What it means to be a boy or girl, for example, and for example, boy is supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to do, not supposed to do. Those ideas, we really have those ideas very strongly in our society, in many societies right now. And if you actually walk into something like a Walmart, right? If you haven't been to Walmart, that's like a big, it's not grocery, but it has everything. Literally everything, big supermarket, right? And it's cheap. And there's a toy area. And if you get there, there's a big banner like that in a picture at the top. And there's a boy and a girl, right? Okay. And a boy has this, it's called a Captain America. It's a hero, muscular, defending other people sort of thing. And a girl has, I think it's a Barbie doll, that has long hair, pretty clothes kind of thing, and with the makeups, and really communicates what, quote, a boy, quote unquote, is supposed to do and supposed to look like, as opposed to girl, and vice versa, right? And it's very also binary notion. Binary means either this or that, either or, nothing in between, nothing mixing up, very clear cut, right? And girls' toys tend to be a pinkish color, and boys' toys tend to be different colors, for example. It's very, very clear, strong message, gender message. What about adolescents? Adolescents tend to use leisure to establish their peer relationships, right, friends? So that they can feel free, independent, feel independent and independence, or textbook said autonomy, but I thought it was confusing because we already talked about autonomy in a different way. So independence from their parents. If you look at the, Erik Erikson's kind of developmental stages, adolescence one of the major tasks is this independence as well. Autonomy, independence, yes, from parents. This is a time when you started to, you started to have the social circle beyond the family. Now, textbook also mentioned that the social media give adolescents a sense of what types of presentations of self are socially acceptable and appropriate for their group. And well, that could, I mean, social media could be a, you know, a convenient way for us to connect with each other. True, there's a benefit to that. But also this part, you know, social self-representation can be a little tricky and problematic because it limits how you should look like, for example. And if you don't fit that model, you could feel, for example, lower self-esteem. You could be socially penalized, for example, bullying and things like that. And that's a problematic too. So it's not necessarily purely, obviously, beneficial. And when I was looking at the adolescents and social media, and one of them, you know, one of the most popular one now is TikTok, of course. And I don't use TikTok, you know, I'm old-fashioned. But I was surprised to learn about this girl. Her name is Carly D'Amelio, I think. She's a 16-year-old adolescent, American, US American, who kind of dances, okay. You know, she's a fair dancer on a TikTok, and she has more than 65 million followers. I know, 75 million followers. That's like more than 1% of the global population, right? And that means at least one of you guys in this course follow her, like statistically speaking, and potentially more than one of you guys, so you know her probably firsthand. And as you can see, these, you know, famous TikTok people tend to have certain type of body shape, maybe certain type of fashion, makeup, things like that, that considered to be the sort of like a role model or just, you know, ideal. And then you want to kind of be like that. But at the same time, if you don't fit in, now that could be a problem too, right? Another thing, I'm very worried about this girl. I mean, having a 75 million followers at 16 years old, that's crazy to me. But again, it's a good way. We're never being able to communicate, you know, connect with so many people in such a way back in the time. So maybe there's a positivity to a social media use and the social well-being as well. Although I'm worried about this person very much. Anyway, moving on to the young adults who often develop, if they find a partner, if it's your choice, but if you do, you tend to develop what is called joint leisure. Leisure that's done by, you know, two of you in a relationship, okay? And for example, Baldwin and colleagues, they studied mostly heterosexual, I think, running couple. So the couple who, you know, both men and women, they run quite a bit, okay? And there are different types of runner as a couple. One of them is a joint runner. One type is joint runner, means they often run together. Like they go for practice together. They maybe do a shopping related to running together, you know, workout gears and stuff like that, shoes maybe. They compete in, you know, those, some of the event together, things like that. They joint runners had a higher marital satisfaction than what they called parallel or independent runner. So independent means like totally themselves, like they don't interfere with the other parties. You know, I don't, for example, I'm not a runner, but if I am, I run whatever I want, wherever I want, you know, whenever I want, and I don't interact with my wife in terms of running, right? Parallel means like, for example, you may run at the same time, but not same price, for example. Things like, okay, I'm gonna go take this route, you're gonna take that route, cool. Okay, I'll see you later, type of things. Now, joint runners tend to have a higher marital satisfaction than them. Maybe makes sense. So doing something together is really important, leisure activity together. Now, this is very practical too, and also research-based. If you don't do joint leisure per se with your you know, partner, what can you do? That happens, right? Provide support. That's what research suggests. They had a very interesting discovery that if you're independent or parallel, you know, runners, as long as you provide some support, maybe support indicates something like, making some good meal, sharing some meal so that both of you can enjoy, and then that's good for your running, it's easily digestible or very nutrition or something like that. So hey, good luck with your run, or competition or something like that. Maybe a little bit of like an item, like a new running, not running shoe, but shoelace, a little string. That's very nice, and then just give it as a gift. Showing those support is very, very important, and it actually makes this difference disappear. That means your marital satisfaction, even though you're not doing the leisure together jointly, it's also high. Okay, so if you don't do it together, then provide a support. Now, leisure, we're talking about adults now, middle-aged, little older adults. So adults use family leisure. Again, we talked about that core and balance model, right? In the first video, check it out, to enhance their family satisfaction. And according to theory, both core and balanced leisure, core being home-based, cheap, frequent, balance is more infrequent, novel, challenging, both are important. However, research is a bit, data, a bit inconsistent. Some studies found that only balanced leisure activities, so something like a vacation, may impact these outcomes like family satisfaction. Now, maybe core leisure is important. That's what they suggested. Another study suggested that only children may perceive the benefits, as in, if you measure family satisfaction from children perspective, like high schoolers maybe, versus parents, adults, children tend to report benefits after those family leisure activity, increasing them rather than parents. Why? Maybe that's because parents have to do a lot of work for those things, maybe. And also another very interesting finding is that sometimes it's only satisfying for father, even within the parents, not mother. Why? Why? I think textbook talked about that potential reason. So I'm gonna just leave it to that. And I want you to be able to, this is a very important finding in fact, and I want you to be able to explain that difference though. And if you get even older, right, there is a time called emptiness potentially. That's when your children leave your family, like your household, right? They started to live alone. Maybe they go to college. Now, when that happens, the adults, middle-aged usually, to close to old age, they have three major options, according to textbook. One is restart leisure shared with your partner, as in joint leisure. That's good. Research back it up, right? It's good for your marital satisfaction. Or you can seek new activity and new group, other group of people, like have a friends and do something else. Maybe that's okay too. I don't see a lot of research on that actually. Focus on your work. Third option is focus on your work. I know quite a bit of people who do it actually in my personal life, and that's definitely an option as well. But that doesn't increase so much leisure. Now, interestingly though, there is a phenomenon called a failure to launch syndrome as well recently. And that means basically you don't get to this emptiness as early as people used to in the past. According to the textbook, about half of millennial young adults remain dependent on their parents. So think about yourself, how many of you actually still get money from your parents, allowances? How many of you are still living with your parents? Of course, now it's a little special condition, with the COVID, and that's not your fault. That's not young adults' fault per se, if you think about it, right? Tuition is more high. If you want to live yourself, it's expensive, right? And by the way, this name is coming from that movie, Failure to Launch. But this clearly has implication for people's leisure, if you think about it, especially from those middle-aged parents' perspective, because they have a kid at home. They can't do certain kind of maybe joint leisure because, well, kids are there still, and they have to take care of the kids sometimes, right? So there is that implication, there's impact. We haven't researched it yet, but this is very interesting research-wise, interesting phenomena. Maybe you can tell me how your parents are doing right now. And then finally, when you get to old age, leisure is very, very important. Social leisure is very important because, and here's the reason, many older adults lose their formal social relationship and roles as a worker, right? Well, many people have a career, right, job, and that helps you to make social relationship like colleagues and or business partners and maybe your subordinates, many things. And a role, you're a boss, and that becomes part of your identity. Now you lose all of that, social networks as well as social roles. You lose all of that when you retire, right? And more traumatically, maybe tragically, many older adults lose their partner, like their wife and husband type of significant other, literally, with whom you did most of the time a lot of leisure activity together. It's called a bereavement, the death of the partner, and that happens statistically speaking. And that's why there is research shows that there's increased importance of friends. Why? Because there's only one partner usually, and you tend to lose that eventually. One of the party, I don't know if it's which side, but someone's gonna lose. And the social connections. So friends are still there, right? As long as you have many friends. And the importance of informal activity increases as well. Talking, visiting, just socializing, maybe going for a coffee shop. In Canada, we go to Tim Hortons, and grab some donuts and coffee. That's very important. There's something called a coffee club, old men and maybe women too, actually. And that's there. And it's about friendship, and it's informal leisure. Research also suggests that older people who do not reduce their leisure participation tend to have a better social well-being, better well-being overall as well. Okay, so here's what the research suggests benefit-wise at the bottom, right? Here's why social leisure and their social connections are very important in older age. Once again, though, is all leisure good for our social health? And obviously not. I'm going to go a little extreme here. What about bullying? Bullying can be considered as a leisure if you think about it, right? I mean, you may go like, what, Chin? That's a horrible thing. It's not. Bullying is not leisure. It's a bad thing. What about, think about it. According to John Newlinger's leisure paradigm we talked about, pure leisure, the best kind of leisure is defined by perceived freedom and intrinsic motivation. At least for some kids who are bullying, not all of them, but some kids, it's A, first of all, it's free. They don't have to do that. They do not have to do that. B, intrinsically motivating. They seem to purely enjoy what they're doing, although it sounds horrible. No, isn't that their, leisure? Isn't that actually purest leisure? Then it has such a horrible social consequences, both for kids who are bullied and potentially bullying kids as well. Leisure isn't necessarily panacea. It's not all positive. What about affairs? Having extramarital relationships. Again, is it free to do? I mean, I think so. It's not like you're forced to do affair, right? And what about intrinsic motivation? I think a lot of times it may be intrinsically motivating and you're enjoying that relationship. Now, it could destroy your marriage, and many other social consequences can happen as well. So not all leisure is good, socially speaking. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I'll see you in the next video.